All right, so we're back working on the 60 MGA and the carpet kit. Let's get going. So it's time to tackle the sill carpet. This is probably the most difficult piece in the whole car to fit. And at least in the case of this kit, probably the least accurately cut piece as well. But if you look at the top of this, it has a curve on it, and then the bottom also has a curve on it here. So if we actually try to look at it and say, well, let's look at it from here, then you're not going to follow that. It's just that curve does not at all match, does not work here at all. So we look at the bottom here, and there's a curve here, and that doesn't really quite work either. It leaves a gap here. But if we tuck this in here and push down on this a little bit right here so that it ends up touching here, you end up with a slight wrinkle here, but you can get rid of that. And actually, this tail of this doesn't really need to be there because we fold this around. You know, we don't really need that full bit of curve. But when we glue this side first, and then we'll actually end up taking the steamer and steaming this a little bit to get it to come around with a little less wrinkle and look a little bit better. If there's going to be any gaps anywhere, I'd rather it be here, because once you've thrown this base carpet in and the seats in, you cannot see that at all. The other thing we need to look at is how far back does it need to be here so that this carpet actually ends up tucking in there nice. And we can trim that just a little bit and everything will look nice there. Then we need to come forward and figure out where to notch this around here. And we need to get this notch established first before we before we even look at anything further forward, because nothing's going to lay well. Now they got the front section here all in one piece in a big Y where it comes forward here. And the big problem with that is if you try to cut it across here and pull this over and this back, then you end up with a big wedge missing there. Now, you could take a piece of carpet, cut it, and put it in there if you wanted to. But as far as any extra carpet we got with this thing, this is about the biggest drop I've had so far, so we can't really do that. What I like to do is cut that right across here. So this piece comes in here, ends up coming in here, across here, across, and then tucking back in this way again. And then take this piece that you cut off and then work with it separately to make it fit in here. Now, you're going to have to cut some off the bottom to get it to pull down, and it's going to come up a little short at the top if you do that, but I'd rather it be short up here and look nice down here, because very few people will see up there unless they're sticking their head into the footwell. All right, so I got the piece actually glued in here now. We got it glued just on this face only right now, because I wanted to get all this as flat as I could, and then we'll worry about, you know, heating this up, which we were thinking about steaming this, like I said earlier, but we've determined that this particular carpet has a pretty low melting point, and we thought maybe the steamer or the heat gun, which we actually have here, which is usually used for doing this stuff, may be too hot. So just as a demonstration about how careful you need to be with some carpet, this stuff in particular, here's the heat gun that's normally used for doing this. See it melting? So you gotta be very careful with it. So what we did, hairdryer, because this is warm enough to get this warm and make it move like we want it to, but also cool enough that we're not going to have to worry about actually melting the carpet. Of course, depending on what heat setting you put it on. So we warmed all this area up here while it was up and then pulled it over, then held it down while it cooled, and now we got it fitting pretty good to where once I glue it, we can get all these, it won't be wrinkled and it'll sit really nice. Now your results might vary depending on what's been done to your car if you're doing this, but in this case, this edge here isn't that smooth and it wasn't clamped up super tight, and so the seal doesn't sit on there as nicely as I'd like it to. But what I had to do once I rolled this over was I had to go and trim just a little bit of this out across here so that the seal can actually go in there and sit on there and go all the way down and hold in correctly. So now that we got this glued down, we needed to tackle this. I've already trimmed it up a little bit. And this is the more difficult piece to actually fit and trim and try to make all the seams come out so it looks good. And it's a little difficult to glue. So I've just got it glued here to hold it into the seam, because if you try to glue the whole thing at once, it gets really hard to place it. So then I can pull it out, and then I can get in there and put glue across this face and the back side, get it wrapped there, then pull this part out and glue this in the face and here. All right, so I got this piece glued in, and I went ahead and put in the side panel while I was right here. It's a little difficult to line these up and get them right on. You gotta use a lot of depth perception to figure that out. And then this piece just sits in there. It's not actually glued in, screwed in or nothing. It actually holds in place just fine. And there's supposed to be one more screw up in here yet. Haven't done that one yet. Now what I did do was right here, because this tends to roll around a little bit, it leaves a small corner there where you can see just a little bit of red showing through. I took a small little wedge of carpet and put that in behind there so that it finishes that off really nicely. So the next piece I would install would be this little piece here that covers the frame rail here. You might have to do some minor trimming to this to get it to sit really nice against the floor. But we want to get this thing to where this thing's pretty centered on the carpet on there, or on the rail here. And when you glue it down here first, and then tuck this around and this around. That way, the shape of it, it'll sit a lot nicer than if you pull this and then try to tuck that down. So now we got this little piece on here. Now there's a little triangle that goes in back in here yet that I haven't put in. But then now we just got to duplicate what we did on this side on the other side, and that'll be both these side rails done. I still got to glue this. I got it trimmed to fit nice. Just got to glue this in place, and then we can look at, and we can do these pieces here. It'd be a good idea on these pieces, at least the center piece, to not necessarily glue the whole thing, 100%, the whole area, but just to glue, you know, the ends down here, just where it folds over. There's something laying back in there. Oh, yeah. And because for servicing the transmission, to take the gear shift out, you want to be able to remove this. Remember, we trimmed this up so that we could get this off. So if we glue this 100% down, that kind of defeats the purpose. So if we don't glue this 100%, then it'd be easier to get it out later. But then the next piece goes in, it'll overlap here, and you can glue this piece if you want, either just on the outer edge or the whole thing, but you want to glue it back here and don't get any glue right on this edge so that this one can be taken out. And that can be lifted up a little bit to tuck it back under. So I'm going to continue doing all this stuff here, and then the next thing we'll be doing is actually putting the seats in, because we'll probably actually trim the carpet around the seats rather than putting the carpet under the seats, because that can actually make it the seats not slide so easily. But if they're cut around the slides, then you can take that carpet out and dry it out if the car gets wet. So that's where we'll pick up in the next video.